In a recent headline in your government, or one of your government newspapers, China Daily, the paper called the U.S. a threat to world peace. Do you feel that way? That the United States is a threat to world peace?
应该这么说。
Candidly speaking, maybe it is because of the economic power and leading edge in science and technology that the United States enjoys, that more often than not, it tends to overestimate itself and its position in the world. But today, I want to convey a nice message to the American people, so I don't want to use too many tough words in our talk.
Al Gore, George W. Bush, one of them is going to be President of the United States, while you are President of China. If they are watching right now, what would you want to say to them about future U.S. relations with China?
这两个党的领导人
I have a lot of friends among the leaders of both parties, Republicans and Democrats.
So you give money to both their campaigns?
我们没有在这方面的。
Are you just joking? We have never done such things.
他的意思是什么？
I have read the campaign platforms of both parties, and I believe whoever becomes president will try to improve the friendly relations between China and the United States, for this is in the strategic interest of the whole world. Someone asked me not to pay attention to unfriendly remarks candidates might make about China during the campaign, because once elected, they will be friendly. I only hope that's true.
How would you characterize the state of relations between China and the United States today, Mr. President?
关系总的来讲，
On the whole, relations between China and the United States are good. However, I would like to use words people use to describe nature, to describe the state of China-U.S. relations. Our relations have experienced wind, rain, and sometimes clouds, or even dark clouds. However, sometimes it clears up. We all sincerely hope to build a constructive partnership between China and the United States.
That's spoken like a real politician. There's no candor in it.
我认为 politician 这个
I
字
don't think
不是太好
politician
的意
is
思
a very nice word.
It's a diplomatic word in this case. You are the last major communist dictatorship in the world.
You mean I'm dictatorship?
Well, of course. A developmental dictatorship is what we believe it is. Am I wrong?
Of course. This is big mistake.
You are, it seems to me. A dictator, an authoritarian.
No, but I very frank speaking, I don't agree with your point. I'm dictator.
I know you don't. I know that you don't. But
people-
there's an old American phrase about if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck and so forth, it's a duck.
What means dictatorship?
A dictator is somebody who forcibly, whether it's free press or free religion or free private enterprise, now you're beginning to come a little closer to that. Father knows best, and if you get in the way of Father, Father will take care of you.
你这个是天方夜谭。
Your way of describing what things are like in China is as absurd as what the Arabian Nights may sound like. The National People's Congress selects the Central Committee of the Communist Party, and the Central Committee has a Politburo, and the Politburo has a standing committee of which I am a member. And no decision is made unless all members agree.
But when we talk about dictatorship, I'm wagging my finger at the president of China. You know what? When I see the picture of that one young man in front of the tank in Tiananmen Square, that to me means Chinese dictatorship. That's a wonderful symbol that hits me in my heart about dictatorship in China.
Don't need translation. I know what you say. 我很
I'm very willing to answer
愿意回答这
these
个问题。
questions.
you were a student protester in Shanghai.
Shanghai, that's right.
At the time of the nationalists, we want freedom, we want democracy. That was you.
That's right.
That's what those people in Tiananmen Square were saying. We want freedom, we want democracy.
首先，我参加学生运动开始。
In the 1989 disturbance, we truly understood the passion of students who were calling for greater democracy and freedom. In fact, we have always been working to improve our system of democracy. But we could not possibly allow people with ulterior motives to use the students to overthrow the government under the pretext of democracy and freedom.
Did a part of you admire his courage?
就是因为至今为止，这个人我也没有。
He was never arrested. I don't know where he is now. Looking at the picture, I know he definitely had his own ideas.
You haven't answered the question, Mr. President. Did a part of Jiang Zemin admire his courage?
你要我说这句话，
I know what you are driving at, but what I want to emphasize is that we fully respect every citizen's right to freely express his wishes and desires. But I do not favor any flagrant opposition to government actions during an emergency. The tank stopped and did not run the young man down.
I'm not talking about the tank. I'm talking about that man's heart, that man's courage, that man, that lonely man, standing against that. 1 month after Tiananmen, you wrote a speech, and in it you said, corruption is growing in the soil. If all our party and our government organs use their power to seek material benefits, isn't this just like fleecing the people in broad daylight? Those students in Tiananmen had also been protesting against the corruption that you talked about. So apparently they did have some effect on you and on your party.
不能允许。我们必须。
I hate corruption. You are right that during the 1989 disturbance, students were chanting slogans against corruption. So on this specific point, the party shares the same position as the students.
Arise, fellow students, to defend the motherland.
担负起天下的兴亡，听吧，满耳是大众的折伤，看吧，也年年国土的人伤。
Mr. President, do you still believe that the United States bombed your embassy in Belgrade on purpose?
不过，我只能反过来跟你讲。
Let me put it the other way around. The United States has state-of-the-art technology. So all the explanations that they have given us for what they call a mistaken bombing are absolutely unconvincing.
What would the United States get out of bombing your embassy in Belgrade?
So that for me also a question. 也是一个问题。
The identification marks of the Chinese embassy in Belgrade were too clear for people to miss. So why has there been such an incident? It is still a question. But we have decided to look forward to improve China-U.S. relations.
I understand that, and that's behind us. But, you know, it's possible for the CIA and the Pentagon to make mistakes. Stupid mistakes. The American people have no doubt in their mind, I think, that this was simply a mistake.
给克林顿讲过好多次。
President Clinton apologized to me for the bombing many times on the telephone. I told him, since you represent Americans and I Chinese, it would be impossible for us to reach total agreement on this issue.
You studied the speeches of Thomas Jefferson and Abraham Lincoln as a youngster? When you were learning English?
很小，我在中学的时候学。
When I was in middle school. And later, when I was a teacher, I used Lincoln's Gettysburg Address in my course. Do you want me to quote some lines from it?
I do indeed.
I will tell you, 407 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceiving liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal.
Why did you learn that by heart?
我就说为什么我
I
引证
focused
开
on the
始的
words,
这一段，
all
就是
men
因
are
为
created
that
equal.
all men are created equal.
Right.
而且我认为林肯的
Because this had a great influence on students when I was young. And I think what Abraham Lincoln described still remains the goal of American leaders today.
It's true.
especially the last paragraph, the government of the people, by the people, and for the people, never perish from the earth.
But Abraham Lincoln was elected by the people, correct?
That's right.
Why is it that Americans can elect their national leaders, but you apparently don't trust the Chinese people to elect your national leaders? Why?
我想告诉你，
I am also an elected leader, though we have a different electoral system. Each country should have its own system because our countries have different cultures and historic traditions and different levels of education and economic development.
But I don't understand still why you have a one-party state. What would happen? What would happen in China if there were 2 or 3 parties? Isn't it conceivable that, as in the United States, the competition between the parties to represent the majority of the people in that country make for a better country?
关于这样一个问题呢，
Why must we have opposition parties? You are trying to apply the American values and the American political system to the whole world. But that is not very wise.
这一点我想很坦率地讲，
Let me be frank.
所以我们双方
China
在
and the
这个
United
方面
States
上
differ greatly in terms of our values.
很大的不同
You Americans always use your values in making judgments about the political situation in other countries.
用你
We want to
你的价值
learn
观
from the
念
West
你的
about
这个
science
意
and
义
technology and how to manage the economy. But this must be combined with specific conditions here.
一直崇尚
That's how we have made great progress in the last 20 years.
New subject, one you're not going to want to talk about. Human rights. You persecute something called Falun Gong. They do exercises, they believe in a certain spiritual life. What is it that worries you so about Falun Gong that you torture, arrest, kill, etc.? What is it?
不过他
I will tell you. Their leader, Li Hongzhi, claims to be the reincarnation of the chief Buddha, and also a reincarnated Jesus Christ. Can you believe that? He said that doomsday was about to come and that the earth was going to explode. In fact, what he says are just fallacies to deceive people. But as a result of his preaching, many families were broken and many lives were lost. So, after careful deliberations, we concluded that Falun Gong is an evil cult.
A cult.
cult.
By the
因为
way,
我们
no
正式的
Falun Gong
法律
followers have ever been sentenced to death.
Look, you have persecuted Christians. It's well known. You have persecuted Falun Gong. It is difficult to understand why a big power like China would want to persecute people because of their religion.
我想
One thing we have to make very clear. Just now, you mixed up 2 things, Christianity and Falun Gong. Under China's constitution, people have the freedom of religious belief. But Falun Gong is a cult. It is totally different from Christianity.
But you will acknowledge then that Christians have been persecuted by the Communist Party in China, yes?
我
No.
们没有 no。我要加一个注明，
But like anyone else, Christians should not break Chinese laws.
And there is not freedom of the press here. There is not. We see a connection between freedom of the people and freedom of the press. What do you fear from a free press?
我想不管哪一个国家，哪一个党派，
I think all countries and parties must have their own publications to publicize their
但是我
ideas.
们的新闻
We do have freedom of the press. But such freedom should be subordinate to and serve the interest of the nation. How can you allow such freedom to damage the national interests?
You have blocked internet sites here in China, the BBC, the Washington Post. Why? Why block an internet site? You don't trust the people somehow to be able to pick stuff up off the internet and learn?
这问题实际上，我跟你刚才谈新闻自由。
We hope people will learn a lot of useful things from the internet. However, sometimes there is also unhealthy material, especially pornography on the internet, which does great harm to our youngsters.
Not from the BBC and not from the Washington Post.
是希望从这个 Internet 上面，
They might be banned because of some of their political news reports. We need to be selective. We hope to restrict as much as possible information not conducive to China's development.
Deng Xiaoping said, to get rich is glorious. Is it conceivable that the more material gains that we make as human beings, the more we become hedonists, permissive?
特殊社会主义
What Deng Xiaoping advocated does allow some people to become rich before others, but the ultimate objective is prosperity for all.
物质丰富
A common problem for world leaders is to avoid material wealth on one hand, but moral decline on the other.
Do you think that America is more decadent, for instance, than China, and that we are exporting our decadence to you?
应该这么说。
Let me put it this way. Due to many differences between our countries in historical traditions, ways of life, religious beliefs, etc., things you don't regard as decadent in the States, we may regard as decadent in China. That's why we have to be very selective.
So that this is very complicated problem. I'm convinced that this interview will be further promoting the friendship and the mutual understanding between our two peoples. That is all.
You believe that?
That's right. I'm convinced that. I trusted that.
You admire America,
That's right.
and you want to be friends.
I want to promote the mutual understanding between two peoples.